Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Plus Three Futures and Commodities show. We are recording here Saturday morning, 8 a.m. on November 8th. As always, my name's Ben Maldonado, and I'm here with Barry Hederachi. Barry, how we doing?
Doing great, doing great.
So there was the shaking of the trees in many markets this week, and I'm really, really excited about the show today because I want to go through and see what monkeys held onto the branches and what monkeys got shaken out. It wasn't just the S&P. We when you and I were talking, there's a lot of markets that had this sort of, violent move and
The monkey
violent
check.
activity.
Yeah.
Yeah, the monkey check. That's good.
hmm
So let's, without any further ado, let's dive right in. I'm very curious to see what your stuff's saying.
All right. And you're going to be covering a few things later, right?
Yep, we're going to cover a few of the commodities that are setting up. We'll review, the ones that we've been talking about for the last few weeks, and just give everybody a little heads up there. But let's see what monkeys held.
What's happening here? Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Let's see. Let's see. So, well, we're starting with the cash, like we always do. And if we're going to use the same chart, where we left off last week. So this area, 66.38, you can see the 50% level here, 38 to 42. This is the range. Let me zoom in a little bit. There you go. Well, the idea was, that's really good support. If we hold here, market's in pretty good shape.
It looks like the SPX daily monkey held.
It had, well, the last monkey held, let's just say,
Right, right.
right? So, well, so this 66.38, 66.40, that area was the 50% level, and the cash managed to hit there, not just stop there, but we talk about in commodities how if on a end of the day the bar closes at the extreme near the low or at the low or the high, the pressure is really there the next day. So here, not only did we bounce out of that support, but we also gained some for the day. So
Yeah.
I think overall that was pretty good, and it came up in a couple of different ways, and we did 3/8 of the square move, which is sort of standard sort of a correction for a lot of markets. And that's what we talked about last week. Yeah, we can come down. We can look at a counter trend and all of this, but the support we were looking for around there, around the 50% level, and we got that. Now we have to see. Okay, is that it? And we're just going to bounce for one day and then reverse, or how we're going to unfold next week. So I would say, the fact that we got all the way down to 50% of the square, we didn't quite hold at these 67.27 levels. We had other structural support, above, right? I mean, right in here about 67.50 didn't hold. And the fact that it all kind of slipped away and it took us all the way down to 50%, where there isn't a whole lot of obvious structural support. You know what I mean? You can see
Hmm.
if we get down to the 65.50, we tapped that a bunch of times before we started to move up. So obviously that's the level we would have to check at some point. And if you notice, that level held well above the sort of the structural support that was below. So there's something happening in this range, and we ended up making a higher low. So I think that's really good.
And one of the things you and I always talk about is when you get a square or you get a hit from a square out, the reaction off of that tells you a lot about how important that square was.
Absolutely. So here, it was 50%, so that's important. And what we're noticing is where it didn't stop, right? We had structural support didn't stop there, and we had support down here at 3/8 for the square, and we didn't get down that far. So we're about an eighth of the square from the real, the big time test really. And at some point, I mean, this is the ideal area here. If you look at the September, October lows here, to come and flush it out before reversing. And so we didn't do any of that. Is that pending? We'll have to see. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens. And I'm sure the story is not done, and we'll have to revisit that. But for now, the fact that we held here short term, I think we're okay. I think for next week, it looks like we should hold above this Friday low, right, or this week's low, and we might get an inside. We might, it's possible we get an inside week because we had so much range this week. So that's something to look forward to. If we have an inside week, then the following week we really have to watch. And that's where the real move might come in, right? Uh, Either we take out the high or low of that. So a few things, few markers. I think we should watch those. And for now, for the cash, those are the kind of levels to watch. Upside, I would say let it run because you can see the structural resistance really around 68.23, 68.25. And we have that little island of price action that we had after that follow through from the big gap. So that's kind of what I'm seeing in the cash. We did have timing up here. We were 144 bars out. I think we'll look at that number. Okay, well, let's just switch to this is the futures chart, December contract. And here, we basically said if we can hold about this 67.35, we're in pretty good shape. What's interesting is, we dipped below, came right back up, and the open and the close were above that level. And we just have the wick of the candle below that. Also, something to notice is the entire, all this project up here, once we broke up above, all of that, considering all of that, we were able to come back down. And, we did break the 1 by 1, but we really jumped off of that. So it looks like a recovery. And the fact that we dipped this much is a little bit concerning. So we'll continue to watch. Obviously, the 67.35 is going to play a role. We want to see, next few days of trading, if we can, manage to hold above it. We might straddle it a couple of times, but net, we want to be able to be on top of it if we're gonna move higher. And then, of course, we have the 1 by 1 coming down. We're not very close to it at this point, but I think this triangle is something to watch, not in the name of a triangle, but just to see where the sort of the momentum shifts. Now, I posted, the 90 by 90 that we had that squared out at the high. That 90 by 90 was fine. I mean, you only need to look at one or two markers when we get up into a high. But coming up into this, we talked about, I think either Ben did or I did. I can't remember when, and it might not have been last time that we talked about it. But, we had this 144. I know, Ben, I remember you bringing that up. So we had this 144 coming off the April low, and it was by 144. You can see clearly where we hit the 50%. So it's 144 by 252. And so we had that square. And, if the square is active, the vibration's active, then we ought to be able to see how it responds as it unfolds. So here you can see we came back down to the 216, stalled here, and that's kind of where we found support. So I think the 72's fully active, and we ought to watch this. And that support level on the 72, I should probably use two colors for the squares. It happens to be 66, 66, 66. And I joked about that when I posted the 4 hour, because that's pretty much a 4 hour support came in. That ABCD that came down pretty much ended at the 66, 66. So there was an ABCD that completed here. We'll look at that a little bit later, which added, a little bit more sort of weight to calling that low. So for next week, as you could, like I said earlier, same thing for the futures. We want to see how the price action works here and how far we can go on this on this counter trend. And we have 68.50, 68.60. That's 1/3 of the square. It looks like there's structural resistance up there. This is what I mean. There's a lot of upside. There's a lot of overhead. And while support was okay, the overhead is still there. So we might just sort of get a flat, kind of a possibly an inside week. So we'll have to keep that in mind.
So it could be another one of those time corrections, right? Where price just gets stuck in a certain range, but it burns off the time.
Right, right. So where time has to catch up. So yeah, that's probably what it looks like. I mean, what goes without saying, obviously, if we start getting weak, follow us on X because we post every day on the 30-minute, 4 hours, and we both of us post, and Ben posts a lot of stuff, especially the NASDAQ. So follow us there. Links are in the description. Always try to get that in when I remember. And now that we're there, if you guys like the video of the work we do, even if it's, if you tune in just to watch one thing, if you like the stuff, remember to click like and subscribe. That really helps the channel. So getting back to the support, obviously, if we take out the lows, we obviously we have more downside, and we'll probably go up and check these levels down here by 65.50, 65.60. So in the meantime, I'm guessing we hold that. And the reason I brought up the following us on X, the short term, is day to day, you can really tell. And when we look at the 30-minute and 4 hour, a little bit later, you'll be able to see that how, tracking that really helps you see how the market's unfolding, and it makes it a lot easier, especially if you're a short-term trader. So, all right, anything you want to add to the futures? We're really watching the low because upside we don't really, we can just trade it. I think there's really no big deal till we get about to 68.60. Want to add anything to that, Ben? Did I miss
No, I
anything?
think those are the levels, and that's the key is what kind of bounce do we get?
Yeah, absolutely. Quality of the balance and what kind of consolidation and whatnot. Obviously, we're keeping our minds open to see if we reverse if the market really weak. A lot of weakness comes in. We'll have to deal with that. But for now,
Hmm.
let's deal with what's here. And not to forget, we did square out. This is not some kind of a, I mean, and plus we had this, plus we had that 90. So it seems like this is okay. So we started some kind of a correction. So, we had a couple of people mentioning on X, um, about, is this a one? If this is a one, we have a two, and do we have a bigger leg down? Or is this just another correction on the way up? So we have to, we can't forget the altitude we're flying. So we have to always keep a check on, okay, where are we? And knowing that, our focus is really mostly week to week. So we're not too concerned about 3 months from now. Although, looking at our weekly chart, we do get the highs and lows. So it all works out at the end, but our primary focus is really more short term. So for that upside, well, we'll have the upside numbers when we get to the 30-minute. But for now, that's all I have. Futures. All right, let's take a look at the Dow. So Dow did a pretty good fake out. We did take out the 67,162 level, and but we you guys noticed this line. We did that, but we still held above the one by one coming off this low back in October. So I feel like this is more of a correction because of that. Um, but let's see, if the Dow can get above Friday's high, settle above this, uh, above 47,162. I think we'll be back in action. So this is off of the 90, I think. That's the area. If we can get above that, I think it'll be great. It'll open up more upside. Watch the one by one. So all of this, again, even in the Dow, we're back to watching the Friday's price action, right? We can get above that or not. It, most likely we straddle this a little bit and we'll probably pick a side. Um, yeah, so that's that. Take a quick look at the NASDAQ. Just running the 90, kind of like what we saw in the cash, I think. The first chart we looked at, we just the wick is below the square. We were able to manage to get back up above. Not, convincingly, not like we have any air above it, but we are, we were able to manage above that, which is a big deal considering how far we were down. So let's see. It's really 25,140 is the level we're watching. We can do that. If we can get above that, I think it'll stabilize the situation and it'll give us that week of consolidation or whatnot that we were talking about earlier.
I mean, there's three
And
different markets that show that tree shaking, right?
oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. trees were
Re
definitely shaken.
really, really, really good visuals of that concept.
Hmm. And here's that 144 I was talking about in the S&P. So 144 in time. And here the NASDAQ shot a little bit above, but you can see we're well below that. So if we were to really look at, daily resistance, 25,718 would be the place where you want to look at it. There you go. I should really update my charts and get some kind of a color coded numbering system in here. That would be nice. So we want to watch that because that's where the resistance is. That's where the timing came in. So I think we have to respect that level. And you can see we did dance around that for 3 days. So it actually means something. Going back to the chart. So yeah, but we'll continue to monitor 25,140 for immediate relief, which way this is going. So that's that. I think that clears that up. There's the cash. Looking at the continuation chart, not much to say. We're back to really looking at that 50% level. So I think we hammered that pretty well. I think we have more to add to that. This is the calendar chart. Again, if you notice the trend line we drew last week or the week before, saying, we do have trend line support here. So there's, we held the trend line, um, almost got above, this is the square 60, I think. So 120. We'll see how it goes. So that's kind of, I think the idea of looking at all the different ones, different indices, different contracts gives us a pretty fair idea of what to expect and um, how to bracket next week. Let's go to the weekly and then we'll go to the 30-minute. Take a look at that. So I think that would be the way to go. So here's the cash weekly. If you really look at what's happening here, we basically had one down week, and which is quite normal. That's just a normal sort of a correction. Now, if we, like I said, Friday's low is really going to be important. If we somehow take that out, obviously that's, we're looking at 64.50, 64.43. That's where the weekly support is, and we're not anywhere near it. Not much on the weekly other than a 1 bar pullback. So we'll have to see how next week shows up. It just seems like it's lining up to be some kind of inside week. If not, if we come back to retest these lows, I think we're going to go lower. Why? Because of those structural support levels that we saw in the first chart. We're probably going to go up and test those if we slip through. So that's the secondary. Like plan B is if we start slipping, then that's probably where the next support level is on the daily, and the weekly a little bit lower. All right. Here's the continuation futures chart weekly. And here, we did square out. This is coming off the 2020 low, and we talked about this. I think we talked about this last couple of weeks. And, it's not a strong, hard square, but it's something to notice, kind of like that 7/8 we noticed last week. And because of that, so yeah, I'll leave this on just to watch it because it's been a very good chart. So here we ran up into the 68.78 was the 50%. We blew through that a little bit. Let me make sure that's the right level. 68.97. Hold on, that's from a different square. That's the difference between you and me, Ben. You get all your numbers straight before the show. 68.97. I should really do that. So 68.97 was the 50%. We ran up into that, reversed, and 65.30, 65.40. So 65.40 is the level. It's a support level at 270 degrees. And again, we're well above that. We already tapped it here, as you can see, before we ran up. So, yeah, we have an outside reversal sort of a pattern, but let's see. This is what we know when you're climbing these kind of vertical slopes, price action can get a little crazy, toward some kind of a high. So I don't think we're quite there yet, but let's watch it. So 65.40 is really strong support, just like on the way up, that was pretty good resistance. And the fact that we tested it before we ran up is, I think it's positive, how well we tested that. All right, we'll leave it at that. You guys have all the levels. Let's jump to the, well, here's the 4 hour. We had this is interesting. It's a, it's a Gartley that, we had this other Gartley first, which helped us get this drop and the second drop, the false break. And then,
That Gartley is fantastic. I mean, look at those equilibrium lines.
yeah, so after that Gartley finished up, then this other next ABCD started showing up. And when it was right about here, once soon as we got the A, B, and the C, I put this on. And then we had the equilibrium lines. I added those. And, it blew through the ideal sort of the ABCD. But then, obviously that's why some of these other ratios help out just to see where we stall at. We stalled exactly at a sort of a little bit of a cluster here. And from there, the next EQ line was the support, but we slipped through. And that first slip basically tells you, but if it slips by this much, it's really weak. You can see the counter trend really didn't go far, came back, the little triangle, broke to the downside and then stopped at the next EQ line, the main one. Rallied back to the old EQ line right there. And from there, we did an ABCD straight down to the lower EQ line. And, we're basically going coast to coast on all of these, right? EQ line to EQ line, then from broke that, came back down. Obviously, that big drop meant we're slipping through. We broke through that and found support here. And what was really cool here is not just the EQ line, but we also had an ABCD competing right there, which, if you guys remember the charts we were looking on the daily, we know we have support levels down here. So everything kind of lined up at that low. And you can see the power that shows up when things line up and the sentiment sort of shifts temporarily and boom, second half of the day was ballistic. So
Yeah, and you went right back to your XB EQ line.
yeah, now but we pushed through.
Yeah.
So another thing to watch next week is really, maybe not uh, hold above 67, 60 right away, but we want to be able to hold at least above 67.40, on the 4 hour. If we can do that, that's a little bit more, I think, extra, a little bit of evidence to it. It's a stronger market. Um, but ideally, we want to clear this level and get on top of this, especially this right there, that little line there. So that's something to look forward to. Let's see what happens. And this is, these EQ lines and the whole, the unfolding of EQ lines are just the part of that geometry. So you can only milk these patterns for so long. So it might start to fade next week. So we'll see when it starts to fade. But for now, it did its job, right? We caught the upside and we caught the downside. We found support. So far, I think it's done well. It's a good chart. All right. So looking at the 30-minute, what can we say? Starting Monday, I think 68.60 was the level we were watching. We were dipping below that earlier last week, 31st, 30th. So after testing this area, I think we left off last week with the idea of 68.60 is going to be sort of the deciding level. We want to watch that, and we want to see the upside. We want to see 68.97. And if we start slipping through 68.42, then we're going to really find some weakness. And that's pretty much what happened. Once we slipped past 68.60, you can see, of course, the support levels held. We kept getting bounces, but all the counter trends, they all stalled at key levels. In the first one on the fourth, 68.42, then that became the main level we were watching. On the fifth, we ran up a little bit past that, but still under 68.60, looking really weak. Sold off 68.06. I mean, talk about ping pong, right? 68.06, ran back up to 68.42. And from there, we had that big drop overnight. No, that was part of it was during the day. Sorry. Rally back to then 67.88 became the resistant level. because that was the old support. So basically it was very weak. You can see levels were getting taken out one by one, and resistant levels were moving down one by one. It was just a really good, well, bear market price action on a 30-minute. And coming into Friday, overnight, we tested these levels. But you can see 67.70, we couldn't get above. We really couldn't get above 67.88. So these are all signs. And I think last week before we left, I said, look, so far what we're having is lower lows and lower highs. And, that theme sort of persisted all through the week until we eventually found some support at 66.52 levels where we had major support. Well, we got there. I thought 66.80 might hold. But obviously markets always slip a little below or a little above the what seems logical, right? So anyway, support came in and we had the big bounce. Now the key thing with that support was you guys can now see how it was in all the different levels, right? And from different ways. The 4 hour had the ABCD and the equilibrium lines. We had the 30-minute. We came down to good support, and the daily we had enough support. So when you get that kind of a move, we get a big run up like this. And I think I even mentioned, watching out for a squeeze move if we find support around 66.80, I think. But we went a little lower, but we still got the squeeze move once support was hit. I think it was because of the daily, right? Obviously, because the support was very good. All right, so that's what I have for the 30. Anything you want to add to this, Ben?
Vibrations there are really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
You could sort of see the support and resistance shifting. And
Mm-hmm.
and and that's what the 30 does is it gives you that early warning signal, hey, things are moving, right?
Right.
And then the other important thing I think for the whole segment is when you get the lining up of the 30, the 4 hour, the daily support, that's significant.
Yes. Yes.
And it's significant in two ways. You get a good bounce, and if it gives way, something much bigger is happening.
Exactly. Well, that
So,
means remember our ABCD rule, right? Which
yeah,
means the 4 hour, if it takes out that low, that hope that's blown, so we're going to go a lot lower. So
yeah.
everything's lined up. And the other nice thing is these squares in different time frames were not the same square from the same place. These are from uh, different places, obviously. So I think that adds a lot of power to it. All right, let's get on with the show. Take a look at the bonds. The
It's
bonds
pretty important, isn't it?
well, we talked about coming back to retest the 45, and here we
Hmm.
are. Um, 2 days, 3 days, we managed to stay above that 116 and a half. What's the exact number? 116.15. And we're just right there, and it looks pretty weak to me. So I think if these lows go, we could certainly slip through. Otherwise, we could just consolidate here, like we talked about last week, kind of like what we managed to do late September, October. So bonds are holding 16.16, 16.15, coming off the 19.16, which we call that to be major resistance. So everything, bonds are trading pretty well. And so for next week, we want to watch the lows. We want to watch the Wednesday's, Thursday low to see how if we can manage to hold above it or not. If we can't hold above it, and we start to get a little weak in the knees, I think we'd have a lot more to go. Mainly because if you look at this trend line, this trend line is going to catch up right around 115. So a couple of points down. What happens? Let's take a look at the weekly. So weekly, the reason obviously we had that 116, 119 number is coming off the weekly chart, the number we had on the daily. And you can see 3 weeks in a row that provided resistance. And this is what we were talking about as we were coming off these lows. We were looking at that to be the target, that to be where the resistance will be. And that's where it was had. So just this trend line. So back to, 115, 114, that's kind of where next support level is. We have some lot of structure there. We'll continue to watch what happens there. That's that's for the bonds. Take a look at crude. Crude is, well, it's setting up. I would say it's a higher low. It's the one positive thing I can say. Now we could get down to 57.70 structural support. There's something there, but we're kind of priming. Watch this pattern now. This is sort of a lullaby pattern, right? We're gonna just sit here and say, oh, it's just all stable. It's never gonna get above 60. But watch this very carefully. This could be a 1-2. You never know. Always want to
It's
watch that first pullback. That's just
yeah,
a habit.
it's quietly winding up, you know.
Yes, it is. That's the thing. You don't want to fall asleep on the wind up, right? The wind
Nope,
is slow.
nope.
And anytime these lows come in, odd lows along the lows, I'm always watching the 1-2. Why are we doing that? Well, the 1-2 here gave us a false break and hell will move back up. The 1-2 here set us up for the same move. And coming down here, why should we not look at that? So keep an eye on that. I think it will be well worth it. And crude trades beautifully when it's moving. And on the weekly, so curiously, we're kind of above the square 72, the 72 level, and that level happens to be 57.60. So let's see what happens. You guys about the levels. All right, let's get back to the daily charts. Here's the gold chart. This is like where the party is, and everybody's here. And
That's a good square. Look
yeah,
at that.
yeah, it's a great square, and it's holding pretty well. And we'll just leave it at that. It's not done. Let it finish up. You can, we're starting to straddle it and starting to stay on one side. So let's see how it works out. There's a little trend line you can watch, triangles that gold likes to do. Now, the big question would be, are we going to break to the downside, maybe get down to 37.82 level before we move higher? Well, I would say watch this 39.69 level. That's the key level to watch. That'll help us figure it out. We're not too interested in the downside. I want to see, obviously we want to catch the next leg up. So let's watch 39.69 and see how we handle that. So far, a couple of days we've been able to hold above it, and that'll be a little bit of a clue. And even going a little lower wouldn't upset the structure that much. So let's continue to watch it. Not much to say. It's consolidating, so we'll leave it at that.
Actually, Barry, you know what's interesting if you go back to that daily?
Uh-huh.
The um the up move was this last leg was about three squares and 1.5 squares back, which would be a 50% retrace, would be perfectly at that 37.82.
Right here, yeah. If you start
Yeah.
from here, right? That move.
Or down a little further, even the
Further
July
even.
move. Go to the
Okay.
July move, from July, it's three squares up.
Right, right. Hmm. Yeah,
So
that would be just about right. Actually, that'd be the healthiest correction we could have.
sure, because it would scare enough people to keep sentiment from getting too overheated.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, let's keep them in mind and hold on to the tree. All right. So moving on to the weekly, pretty much the same story. Weekly supports at 39.15. So watch that. We on the weekly we want to really catch the support level. I think, waiting for a breakout would be a little bit too much. So 39.15, we'll watch it. If you can consolidate above that, obviously this is very bullish. So we'll go with that. Speaking of consolidating really well, silver is doing amazing about this 46.50 level, just 46 and 49. We're consolidating perfectly in a quarter of a square with a 3/4 correction so far. This is super bullish. I don't know what you're thinking, but this looks very good. So it's a matter of just catching the next part up when it shows up. The meantime, obviously going a little 44 is not a big problem. Even come, I mean, 40 would be the ideal for the structural support, right? And then we have 35.50 where we had all the old highs lined up. So we're way out of that range, and which makes it very bullish. So let's see when we finish up with this. So 49.10 to the upside, 46.50 is the sort of the bracket, and so far we've been working the middle part of it. So
It
those are
reminds
levels.
me,
Mm-hmm.
reminds me of gold, as you were saying, the gold, doing a gold correction, which is basically a consolidation. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
on all the way up, gold did that. It would make a fast move higher and then basically go pull back a little bit and go sideways. Fast move higher, sideways. And that's what silver's doing. So it is
Silver
very
too, yeah,
bullish.
yeah. After that flush before the move, right? Everything's been very sideways. Little
Yep.
consolidation.
Time
So,
corrections, but mainly, right?
Yep, yep.
So
Very good. So let's take a look at copper. Copper did well. Copper did really well because it basically ran one square going up, but coming off the November low that we're watching, we're hanging right at that 495 level. Obviously, above that, we're going to consider that to be bullish. And below that, a little bit softer, coming down into this range marked here. It's about 470. Now, the cool thing is this ran up right into one square. If you guys can catch that, well, nothing like visuals, right? So if you can look at this, we basically ran 60 by 60. We tapped the 60 a couple of times, and then now we're correcting. So a 50% correction of that would be right above that level that we talked about earlier. It'd be like 480. So 470, 480, that's the level you want to watch. And we can hold above that. I mean, that'll kind of clue us into what's happening with what's happening with the other metals. So watching it all together, I mean, corrections are looking pretty good. All right, let's take a look at the weekly. Here's the weekly silver first. Talk about behaving. I mean, can't ask for more than this. We corrected right down into the support level, and now last week we had an inside week, which showed up as all that consolidation going sideways, right? 45.60 is a weekly 50% level, so I'm expecting this to continue for a little bit longer. Upper 480 is a level we have to hold above. So you can see how 70, 470, 480, this is really where the big cutoff point is, the bull bear line, so to speak. And and as long as we're above that, I would chalk that up as a sort of a bullish validation. So now it gets a little tricky. We're looking at Bitcoin. We talked about this 103 last week, and we also talked about, if we can't really I think the week before we talked about is 111, 112 is really important. If we can't really maintain that, we're probably going to come down and retest these lows. And I even drew this trend line saying, well, that would give us a triple test. And now it looks a bit exhausted. But anyway, the point is, we ran back up towards 111, 112, couldn't really quite do it, sold off, and went right through the 103, 247 we had, which was where the old low was. And we talked about how, we're coming back again, we're definitely going to test this low and probably possibly this one. And so it looks like that's kind of the flush. 97, 790. Let me mark this up. 97, 790 is a pretty good support level. So I think if we can manage to hold above that, a test of that would be okay, even a little bit of a retest, punch through a little bit like a false break or a flush under that would be okay. But you can see when I put the crosshair on here, what happens is you can see that June low. It definitely below the June low. So if flush below this would be ideal before we start to move higher. So I think that's the thing to watch this week to see if that happens. Friday, well, today, this is not exactly inspiring. Friday, we tried to rally. And the other thing to watch is, whatever happens this next couple of days, if we can hold above the low, 98, this 98,938 around there, which should give us a little bit of air between our key level, just a 90-degree line here. That would be positive, right? So I think there's a low coming in here. We have to wait for a little bit more evidence, mainly because his 90 line was reached. And I think Bitcoin is, from what I know, it always likes to do a little bit of a false break before we run back up. And you guys want to see some examples. Um, well, if you look at here's one, February low, and if you look at the March low, it looks like we're all done. But nope, we came back down in April and flushed it out, and then we started the big move up, right? So it happens a lot. Even this last move up, you can see, we had this low back here, and we had to flush below that. You know, took these out, the obvious ones, right? But then we took that out, and we started the other next leg. Here's a low, took it out, that leg. So it's not uncommon, and so why not preempt it, right? So so that's my Bitcoin bit. Let's take a look at. By the way, the 4 hour, I had a 4 hour Bitcoin chart that I posted on X. It worked out perfectly, just about as well as the ES Gartley that we were watching. All right,
Listen,
moving
for
on to what's that?
the quick point on Bitcoin for a new asset, man, it responds to the squares and geometry really, really well.
Well, people are involved now, right? The focus is there, the liquidity is
Yep,
there,
yep.
psychology is there, certainly um, tuned in. So yeah, it's looking good. All right, so the dollar kind of went towards where we wanted, 150, 100.5. Okay, is resistance. We stalled right under that and we sold off. 99.50 is also sort of support resistant level, a marker, early marker, let's say. So we managed to kind of hold above it. If you draw a trend line, we're kind of holding it coming off the low. You can see right there, just holding. So let's see. We can. I mean, you can even get down a little bit lower. So draw your trend lines and structures, and let's just watch it because I think the low is in. It's just a matter of how we do the rest. This is not some kind of a quick fast pump and dump kind of a pattern like where we had here. With a very fast move and then it sold off slowly. Very fast move, sold off. And here it's a very sort of sloppy bull market, and this is how some of these get started. So let's watch that above 99.50. Obviously, it's going to be much stronger. Anything you want to add to that, dollar?
The you have the levels and that's kind of a good visual of the similar patterns coming down. Now we have a similar pattern going up. So let's see
Right,
if it
right,
keeps doing the higher lows and higher highs.
right. But they were definitely shaking the tree, the dollar tree,
These were shook in a lot of markets.
dollar tree. Get it? Okay. So, all right. Well, the weekly, I don't have to elaborate too much. We had the false break. We were looking for it to move higher, and it's doing just fine. And we had this little zone. We wanted to really have it hold above. A lot of structure in there. So 98.25, 97.83. So we're holding above that fairly. I mean, we're well above it now, but looks like the things are moving. So it's just a matter of trading it in that direction. I don't think it's too, once things get moving, it's not that tricky, right? It's just figuring out the timing for 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 a market to move, kind of like what we're doing in grains and the energy sector, right? We're watching, waiting for the thing to get started because once it gets started, its analysis is not that tricky. It's the consolidations that we have to be careful with.
Exactly.
So, all right, well, here's the euro. I added this equal move. Usually, this pattern is very good for support resistance, and sure enough, we came and tapped it, sat on it for a couple of days, and a little bit of a bounce. And well, that's fine. Weak conditions below 1650. And obviously, if we take out Wednesday's low, we have a lot lower to go. 1345 would be the next support level. All right. So that's the euro. But you know what the nice thing is? A lot of markets are moving. There's a lot to trade. Nobody could
In,
say, oh, nothing's moving. I don't have anything to trade. If anything, we
in
got too many things.
indeed. A lot of volatility.
So it's a good time to be alive. If you've been trading for a while, if you traded in the 90s, um, this is like unbelievable the amount of things you get to trade. All right, looking at the weekly euro, again, 1654, we're below that. We kind of battled it for a couple of weeks. Inside week last week, we talked about that. What happens if the low goes and low went? We had a nice move down. And of course, the currencies can counter trend. So watch the counter trends. But if you look at the weekly trend, we had this little mini triangle, broke to the downside. Yeah, maybe a retest, but looks like we have some kind of a trend. And the reason I say that is, when we were moving, it was very clean, right? But as soon as we hit the highs, I mean, the square was really here, the timing was here. We did the false break, and after that, you could see that it just stalled out. You know, there's not a whole lot of momentum going for it, the upside, clearly. So, all right, that's the euro. I think that sort of rounds up my all the things. You watching? You can talk about natural gas, which is
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
upper end
nat
of the
gas.
segment.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
yeah,
slowly
for
moved up,
sure. It's
and what were we gonna say?
just saying it's making progress.
Yes, quietly.
Hmm.
And Hang Seng kind of hung in there. This 26,230 is really sort of the deciding line. It's 50% of the square, and if we can settle above it, I think we can certainly move higher. And this week, with the weakness in the U.S., Hang Seng didn't sell off too badly. Held really well. So I think there's in a strong position as far as that goes. All right, let me put it back to you. Let's go to the NASDAQ and the longer term chart for Bitcoin and all the commodities.
Yeah, really good coverage of the tree shaking. I mean, like I said, when you look at those charts, you can see the trees were definitely shaking this week.
Yeah, thanks. Next week we'll see which monkeys are held on, right?
And that's exactly right.
All right, let me put it back to you. That also held above the trend line. Is that a one by one? It is, right?
Yeah, that's a one by
Yeah, we
one.
held above that. So this is what I mean. It looked a little scary, but it held right above that. So we have
Um,
to, next week's really the one. Gotta
yeah, I
watch.
mean, and again, just look at the lows, right? There's your
Mm-hmm.
low, higher
Mm-hmm.
low, potentially another higher low.
Mm-hmm. So for
So
you, it's the 25,720, the big deal there,
yeah,
right?
that's the big number, right? It's a 360 up. So we want to see, price get back above there. If we rally, for a few days and get stuck under here and turn down again, then it could be trouble. There's bigger possibilities for going down, like you were talking about, at the
Mm-hmm.
lows for copper and these other things. This could be a one, two, and then minimally an A, B, C, D. Bigger move could be the fast third leg. So
Right.
we'll be watching that. The key thing, which I've highlighted, is this, 24.2 to 23.9 area. You got structural support and half square. So any weakness that, is held there is still structurally bullish. And we didn't even get near there, if you see where the low came in.
Right.
So this next week, we want to watch, Monday, Tuesday. Do we get a 1 day rally? Do we get a multiple day rally? Because that's going to be a key. If we have a 1 day rally and a reversal, then that's going to signal we're going to come down and test this area pretty surely. If we have a strong market and we can get above and sit on top of, 25,720, then we're
Mm-hmm.
going to challenge the highs.
Right.
So that's the daily. Let's take a look at the calendar day for a little different perspective from a different shot. You can sort of see there's tree shaking, and I'm sure they shook some monkeys out of the trees, and some monkeys held on, but it held, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We tapped the half square up here, 26,427 at the high, pulled back right into this cluster of support in addition to the full square. Pushed below it. That was your tree shaking, and now let's see if we can sit on top of it this week.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be the key. If we get stuck under that again, and you were talking about taking out the lows in the ES, same thing in NQs. If we take out those lows, we got a lot further to go.
Yep.
So that's the daily calendar day. Let's look at the weekly. And you can see on the daily, we were talking about that, 24,000 to 23.8, 23.9 area. That's why it's really important on a weekly basis.
Hmm.
Now that's a big down bar, right? So it's not anything to dismiss, because as you said, you got to look at where are we in the move, pretty big move off the 2020 lows. So we have to always be aware of, is this, uh, is this a potential major high? Because it could be, right? We had timing,
Hmm.
and, fell just short of the half square up there. But this week, as you were saying in the ES, it wouldn't be surprising if we have an inside bar, and then the
Hmm.
following week we'd want to watch the high and low of that bar to get a clue to which way we're going. But structurally, we're still bullish. Um, we're above this key 23, 24,000, 23.8, 24,000 area. So as long as we are sitting on top of that full square, it's still bullish. We did have, 30 weeks in timing, which is not insignificant at that high.
And notice we had 45 weeks high to high,
Yep.
which is, you know, kind of a big
Again,
deal.
not insignificant.
Mm.
Let's put that on so people can see that.
Hmm.
Just a little adjustment and you'll see exactly what he was talking about. The 45. There it is.
That's a big deal. And also, what do you have there from the
From the low was 30.
well, from the high before that? What is it? June, July high right there. It's 67 count, 67 weeks,
Yeah, that's right.
which is basically 45 plus another one and a half square.
Plus a
So,
half square. Yeah.
hmm,
So there's
that's a big,
definitely
yeah.
timing at that
Hmm.
high, and it fits with all the shorter time frame timings that we've seen and we've documented. So it's why we want to watch. Okay, we've had this first move down. The trees have been shaken. What are they going to do next? Right? Can we push up and make a new high? I mean, there's three scenarios, right? We make a lower high, which is bearish. We make a higher high and keep going, right, and get above this half square, and then we can keep going. Or we do some sort of false break high into here in reverse.
Hey, you
And
also
those,
have 202 weeks from the 21 high.
wow. I mean,
That's,
they keep coming in, so that would be from here.
yeah, it's four and a half squares.
Yeah. Yep.
Pretty good.
So
That's a good harmonic chart there.
there's a lot of timing. So we
Yeah,
gotta
yeah.
really pay attention, as we said, pay attention. It's late
And,
innings. Let's if it's
hey,
baseball
and you also have
analogy.
a count from the 22 low,
Good Lord. Yeah, here I was
right?
just
Three and a
doing the
half
90,
squares,
but I
right?
guess if
Yeah.
you move it, it's even more. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Nice.
A lot of timing.
Yep.
All right, let's quickly take a look at the monthly. And you can see again why that 24,000, 23.9, 24,000 is really important. Here in the monthly, it's 180 up
Hmm.
from the 2002.com lows. And we're gonna do an inside bar for it looks like unless we get a major move in either direction here. But there's timing here on the monthly too. 47 high to high, 47 months,
Yeah,
36
36 is pretty
months,
good.
low to high. I mean, there's a lot of timing in here. So we are, as always, when we're, at this stage of a move, we're on alert, but let the technicals govern it. We're not trying to anticipate the turn. We're not trying to, predict the top. We're just noticing things. And then as the technicals and structure dictates and geometry, then we start mounting evidence.
We are trying to trade it though.
Absolutely, we're trying to trade it. That's for sure.
Hmm.
Anything else you want to add here
No,
on
we're
the
good. We're good.
NQs?
I like seeing these monthly charts because it brings you back to reality, You kind
Yeah.
of tend to forget that when you're looking at 30-minute charts.
Yeah, it's that
Hmm.
zooming out, right? You have
Hmm.
to zoom out every once in a while to see not only where are you, but how did you get here? How did you get here? That's an important part of that equation. How did you get here? All
And where
right,
did all
let's
that money come from? Never
It's
mind.
crazy. That's a whole nother show.
Hmm.
All right, let's take a quick look at Bitcoin. Barry gave you a good perspective. Let's look at another one. Here's a nice argument for the false break lower prices you were talking about.
Hmm. Hmm.
If we did an ABCD down, which, it looks like it's playing out, that gets us to around 93.6.
Hmm.
That would take out these lows, put us into these little mini lows, which would, a little overshoot here would take those out as well.
Hmm.
But the key is, as you pointed on your chart here, 108, once we got stuck under 108, you can see, remember here we found support, here we found resistance, here we were crisscrossing it, couldn't quite stay under it. As soon as we got that bar under it, there we go, right? The pressure goes on. And
Hmm.
and as
Hmm.
long as we're under that, 96.6 is the most probable target, the next target. And if we get down to 96.6, maybe it overshoots to, fulfill by an eighth to fulfill that ABCD.
Get that last monkey.
Yep. Shake that last one out of the tree. So that's until we're above 108, this is the most probable direction, right? Down in here, not a lot of downside, but just to have you be aware of, okay, how could this leg end? This is
Right.
this is some ideas
Something to
on
watch. Yeah.
yep. Just like your false break idea, this is another idea of
Hmm.
how this leg could end. Let's take a look at the weekly. And the weekly, we're still battling here at this 107. We have not gotten that full bar under there. If they don't rally quickly here in the next, Saturday, Sunday here, where we were recording now on Saturday, if we can't get above here before the first weekly bar, the first print of the week, the next week's bar, this could give us a bar that's stuck under there and, accelerate the push lower. The false break would be here, right?
Hmm.
Which is not too far away. But
Indeed.
let's see how
Exactly at
that
the quarter
goes.
quarter quarter square line.
hmm The quarter square here would be around 98,
Hmm.
98.3. So let's watch and see if you're looking at your weekly charts. Let's see if we get that full bar under here. If we do, then that the pressure is down. The pressure will be, continue to be down on a weekly basis. And talking about the harmonics, Barry, look how well this thing, the half square,
Hmm.
full square, half square, full square at the top,
Yep.
timing at the top after the, if you take this as the high because this is a
Hmm.
false break, we had
Hmm.
timing as well there. So it does respond well to geometry. Here's your monthly. And lo and behold, after 6 months, one, two, three, four, five, yeah, 6 months battling here at this 111. And that's I think you had 111, 112 on your daily was really
Hmm.
important. Here on the monthly, look at how important it is. And the first time we got price stuck under this month, we found the weakness. It's a really good example of how, once when you're crisscrossing, anything can happen. You're kind of chopping around, but as soon as you get stuck under, things happen
Hmm.
and markets start moving. So monthly basis right now, the pressure is down to 93, which would fit in nicely with that ABCD on the daily we showed. So the pressure on all three time frames, provided that we get that weekly, the next weekly bar does not exceed 108, all three time frames will be pushing down. So there could be one last push here in Bitcoin. Again, bigger picture, is it bearish? No, it's really not bearish because the structure is still really, really strong. As we talked about multiple times, on a monthly basis, we could pull back to 74,000 and still be really bullish because, right, we'd be on top of all this price action here. So let's see. Short term and intermediate term, there's still pressure in Bitcoin. Anything you want to add looking at the bigger time frames here?
No, we're good. We're good.
Okay. All right, let's talk about the commodities. Last week we highlighted all three grains. They all, had some strength after that early in the week. Made a sort of a little bit of a high on those and have started pulling back. So we're not going to go over them because we're basically going to watch this coming week to see what types of lows we put in. Do we get higher lows? Do they stay on top of, structural support? Are they um, validating, half squares and important spots on the square? So we'll be talking about those. Bigger picture still looks very good. We're broadly bullish on them. We just want to sort of let those patterns develop. The ones I want to talk about are cocoa, coffee, and NatGas. So let's start off with cocoa. Cocoa we talked about as we had an ABCD came into here that ended on a full square. Um, that's always a uh, pay attention moment. And we got strength right off of that. And we've pulled back. We're watching to see, does the pullback hold this trend line? Does it give us, another higher low? If we get that higher low and then a reversal, we're going to get in this trade long. So Coco's setting up for a nice long trade. I think worst case scenario, the trade could set up for something like this, where we do, let's say the low comes in right in here, where we get a nice ABCD up into this 70, the half square, 71, 7,200. The best case scenario is it pulls back and we catch a powerful third wave with a bigger move, much bigger
Yep.
move.
Yep.
So those are the potential patterns we're watching to see. Does this low come in as a higher low? If we pull all the way back into here, it will be let's abort and just let it see if it sets up again. So for now, that's what we're doing on the daily. Let's give you a quick look at the weekly. There's your weekly. You can see we had we had strength early in the week, closed on the lows. So this first thrust is done. Now we want to see where this low comes in
Mhm.
that we saw on the daily. Here's a quick look at the monthly. Monthly, we're inside last month's big bar, so not a lot of clues on this. The main thing is we want to watch the pullback on the shorter time frames and to see
And
if
that
we if
59.15.
huge, right? A monthly basis. But the big thing we're watching is the 4 hour and the daily here to see do we get the higher low and a reversal that tells us okay, there's more to come.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything you want to add on cocoa?
No, I think that's worthwhile because we're trying to catch that first couple of pullback to see if we can get an impulse back up into that 71.
Yep.
So if we can get past that, we got something to work with.
Yeah, then it gets the much bigger move, right? If we
Hmm.
get stuck at 71, 72, then it was just an ABCD, but it would be a profitable one if we trade it, on this
Exactly.
pullback.
Hmm.
But if we get through that, then we got a much bigger move coming.
Yep.
So we'll see how that goes. All right, let's go to the next one. One we've been rocking back and forth uh, quite well this year. Coffee, right? Coffee, we called out this high. We had the first pullback, came right into support. We've got a lower high. This gap I went back and looked. This was caused by a contract change, but there is weakness, right?
Hmm.
And what we're going to do this coming week is we're going to say, okay, let's make sure, see if this gap gets filled for the contract and we get a little reversal or get weakness right off the bat. Then we're going to play this thing lower. Because again, here we're looking at the same thing as we were talking about in cocoa. You had your first move down, lower high comes in, and now we're trying to catch a third here. So this is set up just like cocoa, just the opposite. Cocoa is bullish. This is bearish. We want to keep a close eye on coffee this week for a potential entry on a short trade. Here's your weekly. The key thing on this weekly is we got the false break into a half square reversal. Now we've come back up. Last week we had a big wide ranging bar because of the contract change. But this week we want to see, do we stay under 410? If we do, then we know the pressure is going to be down towards 384. And let's give you a bigger picture view on the monthly. Again, you can see the false break into timing, right? 288 from the '01 lows. And that's 288 months, Barry. Look at that. That's pretty good, huh, for timing?
Yep,
So
that looks yeah.
as you can see, 404, the half square is the key number here. As long as we're below that monthly basis, the pressure's down. But
And that 404, that might be a little bit of a hint. Let's see.
there you go. But the key is
Mhm.
here's the let's watch the daily, let's watch the 4 hours, let's see if it sets up where we could knock, solidify in this lower high, and then we enter on the short side for
Yep.
coffee.
Mhm.
All right, last one. Let's look at natural gas. You mentioned it. And yeah, we had a contract change here.
Mhm.
But look what happened after the contract change, right? Here's the contract change, came up into that resistance, which is the full square, had a little pullback, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's just natural gas." The move up was just the contract change, and then look what happened, right? Got a reversal, and now we're back above this full square of
Yep.
401.
Mhm.
If we get some kind of pullback, we want to watch and see, do we hold four? If we hold 401, then 460's next, right? Half
Yep.
square resistance. And
Mhm.
you know what I was thinking about, Barry? One of the reasons, I know this is not a show about fundamentals, but one of the reasons why we may be seeing this move in nat gas
Mhm.
is I keep hearing that in the short term, while we build all this nuclear and other sort of electricity generating capacity to handle AI's demands,
Mhm.
that nat gas is the only solution.
Right. That's true.
And that
Yeah.
may be why we're seeing this strength in nat gas after, couple years
Mhm.
of this sideways stuff and weakness.
Not to
It's something
mention European demand.
that's right. That's right. So there's the European demand that just they need it for heating, but there's the big
Energy.
demand, yeah, in the short run. They think next, 3, 4 years, while this excess other capacity gets built for electricity generation, that nat gas is going to be the big beneficiary of it.
Um,
So let's watch. We don't care about the news. Let's watch the technicals and see. 401 daily basis is the key here. Here's your weekly. Again, it looks like a chart that is turning bullish, right? We had the low come in, a little false break into a area of big long-term support. We had a higher low, higher high, another higher low. Now let's push and see if we can get above this 471 and lock in another higher high.
mhm.
Let's look at the monthly. Same picture here. 488 is the key number. It's the half square. That's we made an attack there early this year, pulled back, but got another higher low, and now we're pushing again. We've already made a higher high this month than last month, which is the third month in a row. So let's see. We know the numbers. 488 is the monthly that we want to see us get above. On the weekly, it's 471, and on the daily, 460. So Nat
Good.
Gas is quietly the Widowmaker is quietly waking up, and I think there's a play here that's coming for people, and that AI angle may be the thing that really is boosting people. Anyway, that's it for me. I know we've been saying that the it's not going to be boring from here to the year end, and it's certainly showing not to be. Expect the trees to be shaking some more. And I think Barry and my coverage today gave you the good levels in these different markets to watch for the coming weeks. So rest up, everybody, and we'll talk with you next week.
Good job, Ben. And we'll see you guys. Well, maybe on X. And also comment. If you guys have anything to say, talk about how your analysis lines up with ours. Feel free to comment. And have a great week.
We'll
Talk to
talk
you
to you
guys
next week,
later.
everybody. Take
Bye bye.
care.